In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at these current conditions, and we're also going to dive into three different models: the GFS model, the European model, and the Canadian model, and comparing all of them over the next 10 days and getting an idea of which of these models are on the same page and which of these models are in disagreement. And that could help us decide what might be the most accurate solution out there right now. Now, there is a lot of activity happening here currently. No surprise here at all. We have another storm system moving on to the western regions of the United States. We have our most previous storm that was located over the western United States, kind of a broad area of low pressure. Some frontal boundaries going on in there, some occluded fronts, some warm fronts, some cold fronts. And then we have kind of these weaker frontal boundaries that aren't bringing too much precipitation with them. Mostly over here on the eastern end is where you have more of this activity taking place, here near the eastern coast there. And then we can see for the Great Lakes up here, we do have a low to the north here, and this is kind of bringing in some precipitation here to the Great Lakes regions. Now we'll start out west. Here in the northwest, we do have some heavier, more sporadic showers. Here, it's as you work your way further south, we get this little bit more of a persistent look here across southern Oregon, northern California area. Obviously, this is in the form of snowfall for a lot of our Sierra Nevada mountain range areas like this. And then for your more coastal valley regions here, as this warm front approaches, we do have some warmer air around and obviously some rainfall taking place in those areas. Now, this storm here, which was our most previous one over the west, that has now moved up into the southern plains here, or kind of the Rockies, the very western front of the Rockies there. We do have all of this snowfall taking place out here, and a lot of this is happening in Wyoming, also here in Colorado, and then kind of your very western regions there of South Dakota and Nebraska there. Now, as we work our way a little bit further eastward towards the Great Lakes, we can see this storm system moving through, and this is kind of a mixed bag here. We do have some snowfall for Wisconsin, Minnesota as well, and then it becomes more rainfall there for Michigan, both in the lower and upper peninsulas there, seeing more rainfall around. Now, as we work our way through the Ohio Valley here and into the Mid-Atlantic, there is a passing rainfall shower or two with this warm front. Obviously, overnight last night was pretty cold. We're going to have this warm front, as you can see, it's kind of snaking its way along here. This is going to push the warm air northward, so we see it working its way through. And eventually, this will work its way all the way up the East Coast over time. It seems like it's not going to happen now, but it will. That's going to happen, and then we'll have this swinging cold front behind it with one of these storm systems that's going to come through soon. And this is going to bring a lot of storminess in these areas, even potential for thunderstorms up and down the East Coast, as we do have a general thunderstorm risk, basically, at least for all of these areas here, which is very surprising in the month of January. But let's be real, with how it's gone, is it really that surprising? Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to move on here. And we're going to move on and, again, compare all three of those models and get into the temperature guidance at the end as well, and just talk about the upcoming pattern as we move forward. Now, here we are taking a look at this European model, and this one has consistently through this wintertime been the best model, so we're going to start with this one. The GFS has consistently been the worst model, so it's the exact opposite. And then we're going to take a look in a minute at the surprising Canadian model that has been just a sliver less accurate than the European model, but very close actually in accuracy, kind of been a second best. It's usually been, in the past 10 years that I've been paying attention to weather, maybe even more than that. The European model was the best still, but the GFS model was usually better than the Canadian model, but the GFS model has regressed terribly to the point where the Canadian model has kind of taken over as that second best. Also, the UK models can't be ignored. We have less products from that model. We can't really see the same amount of different things like the precipitation type, the total snowfall, things like that we need to use. You don't get that from the UK model as easily. So that's why we usually don't take a look at that one. Now, our most upcoming storm system is going to start out here really tomorrow, Thursday. We see it developing here across Missouri and Arkansas there. We also have another system here in the northwest. And what we're going to see develop is a cold front underneath here. The warm front, like I said, is going to be pushing northward, and that's going to create this warm sector, this corner between the two lines there that I've drawn is going to be this area that we're watching for thunderstorm activity and severe weather. And as this swings through, we could see that this warm front isn't very convective compared to the cold front, and that is very typical. We have our low around here, and again, still have this warm sector, the cold air pushing through, and it's along this cold front where we're going to be watching for severe weather to potentially take place, especially Thursday, like I mentioned here. As you can see, by the time we're reaching Thursday into Friday, so this is Friday morning, Thursday evening time frame, but really mostly Friday morning. We do see there is a lot of convection along the east coast here, and this is going to be in the form of thunderstorms and severe weather potentially right around 6 a.m. As a lot of dew points and temperatures will be quite high along this area, 60s primarily, 50s in the dew points, which will be pretty much sufficient there for thunderstorm activity for some spots, in my opinion. We have some snowfall showers happening on the back end of things across the Ohio Valley and into the interior eastern United States, but really, this storm has really underperformed. It appears like every single model run we're seeing a regression here of this storm, and we have a huge trough dipping all the way down to the east coast of Florida there. So the potential was extremely high. It just didn't time out correctly. And sure enough, we get left with pretty much nothing here according to the models. Now we have another storm system, no surprise here again, moving on shore to the northwest, and that is going to be our next storm system we're watching. As you can see, it kind of makes its way through, kind of dives down, and it ends up here near Colorado, bringing snowfall across the Sierra Nevadas and Southern Rockies here, especially some more persistent snowfall in there. And then we get this storm system moving northward here across the plains. This could bring some severe weather underneath. Wouldn't surprise me with that cold front kind of developing, warm front here. So again, you get that warm sector look here. Definitely could bring some severe weather around Monday the 16th into midweek there, where we do get this reaching the eastern United States as well here. Could again bring thunderstorms, especially this more convective area that we're seeing right in here, all the way from the deep south into the Carolinas. That could be an area of interest to watch around midweek, Tuesday into Wednesday. We do get our next storm system here again, cold front, warm front look. So we're getting these kind of persistent storms. Some warm air definitely heading in from the Gulf, warm, moist air. And we see this storm kind of lifts off and becomes one of our more major storms on the model run. We see for the upper Midwest and Ohio Valley and Great Lakes potential for a snowstorm here, or even some heavy snowfall there in Iowa, Missouri, Illinois especially. We'll be watching for that. We can clearly see the cold front dipping down here and that warm front look here as well. So we get this warm sector look again. So we can see that we're stuck in this revolving pattern, as you could tell, where we're getting these very similar types of storms rolling through. And again, we'll be watching for thunderstorm and severe weather activity through this pocket as this storm system rolls through. So definitely as it reaches the east coast here, which would be right around, I would say, this is approximately 2 a.m. there on Friday, January 20th. We do have this cold front rolling through with this model, bringing potential for thunderstorms along the east coast. How far up north the east coast is kind of still in question. But I think the most interesting thing here is I feel like this cold here is super charged to start heading into the eastern United States at this point. Right around Friday, Saturday, I see a big change. I see a bit of a warm up here. We get this kind of a look here, but this seems to me like it wants to curve towards the east. We do have a bit of a clipper system, which we haven't had much of that this season. This is kind of an interesting look here compared to what we've seen so far this year. But it looks like some moderate snowfall here for Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin at the end of the model run here. Pretty interesting. I think this cold is definitely moving eastward here around this point, so just after the 20th. And if you've been tuning in with us daily, a few days ago we were mentioning that time frame is kind of time to watch. Let's go ahead and switch over to our GFS model. That's the end of it, but we'll just keep going. Now we see similar things through about hours 180. We're going to stick right here and just move on because we do get some interesting things happening. We get this cold kind of supercharging right around the 20th, like I said, where we get it really looking like it's going to be transient towards the eastern United States. We'll watch for that. We do see some snowfall happening for Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas as well. They're right near the panhandle areas. And then what we see happening is a couple of these systems do bring some snowfall here. The low a little bit further south, but we still have that cold front, warm front look. It's just a little bit miniature there in the corner of the southeast United States. Then we get a bit of a nor'easter that develops from all of this. As you can see, it's right offshore Virginia, North Carolina. We do see some snowfall kind of in this corridor here. So Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. But this is a pretty far south snowstorm. And again, out of the three, this is the worst model. so far this season, so we're going to take it with a grain of salt, but it kind of recycles back south. It's kind of a weird motion we see there. There is plenty of cold air, this kind of pretty extreme trough there happening, and we do get the southern mid-Atlantic and portions of the southeast getting snowfall. I would I would definitely suggest taking that with a grain of salt. Then we start to get these warm-ups here where we're getting this kind of a flow. And what this does is it creates a ridge here and it kind of reinforces the trough out west. And we see that totally happening here by about the 27th. But this is our worst model here that we're taking a look at today so far this season. But we get a kind of a continuation of what we've been seeing. The Canadian model is pretty interesting because it's almost a carbon copy of the European model, in my opinion. We get this very cold air, again, diving southward into the eastern United States right around the 14th this weekend for a very short period of time. And that quickly turns into a warmer pattern where we get a storm system moving through here in the southeast right around midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. We get our next storm system right around Thursday the 19th here, where we again have that cold front underneath, warm front up above. And that will bring the potential for severe weather. But what happens is at the end of this model run, we do get this same kind of a clipper system look as we see on the European model, which again, it's very interesting to see a kind of feature like that far out, so similar on two different models. And we're getting this look in the cold, just like on the European and GFS model. The GFS model just takes us further. But I think all three of these models are calling for the cold to basically head into the eastern United States at least for a few days. And that would be true Arctic air. So that could bring the potential of snowfall with it. It could not. I still am questioning if this is the return of long-term sustainable cold air. And that's really what we need to get into a cold and snowy long-term pattern. I don't know if that's what we're seeing here yet. This is obviously very far out, and even to see a very short-term potent cold outbreak here, I'm still questioning that as well as it is in the very, very long range. But it is interesting to see all three of these models showing it. And when we take a look at the European model here, we do see this cool down right around the 14th here. So we see the cold air for just a blink of an eye here. We've been watching this time period for quite a while now. So we get this little bit of a ridge and then a dramatic trough there in the east. But look at how quickly that's for Saturday. And already by Sunday and Monday, we're seeing it move out, and very, very warm temperatures here in the east. Cold temperatures out west have already returned by the time we're reaching midweek. And we see that continue on. The first signs of some colder after the 20th here on this European ensemble model, where we get more neutral temperatures in the east. And look at how much colder it continues to get over time as we approach the 26th here. I would say it's a majority cold in the east, and there is some warmth along that west coast telling me that there is some signs of a positive PNA perhaps trying to build in. So we'll be watching for this, but it is so far west with this positive PNA. It's so coastal here that this would probably lead towards snowstorms cutting through the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, somewhere like this, where we see rainfall all on the eastern end and snowfall perhaps on this western end. But if we were to see a ridge that took over all these cold areas in here, this would set up the jet stream perfectly to where you get more of these coastal areas involved with potential snowfall, talking about these areas here. We need a ridge far into the Rockies, really, to see that type of a trough set up in the position we need it to be in for a snowstorm. Now, we're getting a little bit complicated here and hypothetical, really, because we're not seeing any of this yet. But I'm just trying to give you guys the building blocks for what we're watching for when winter will finally arrive and give us that snowfall and cold that we've been pretty much desperately waiting for if you're talking to a cold and snow lover. Now, be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day, and we will be going over all of these things daily. You can even hit that bell icon and click all videos to make sure you get notified when we do upload so you never miss one. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.